Hi, I'm Sean Armstrong. Welcome to Module 5 of this free course based on Bloodstained Banner. In the last module, we walked through a century of regimes that claimed socialism or communism and left behind mass graves, famines, and police states. Whenever you bring that history up, you'll hear the same chorus of replies. This lesson is about those replies. The working title is, That Wasn't Real Socialism: How Defenses Shift After Each Failure. Let's start with the three big defenses that come up over and over again. You've probably heard them. 1. That wasn't real socialism. The country that actually tried it doesn't count. 2. Sanctions ruined it. If the economy had collapsed, it's always because outside forces sabotaged a beautiful experiment. And 3. The idea is good, the people were bad. In other words, our ideology is perfect, history keeps casting the wrong actors. Whenever a socialist or communist regime fails, you can almost set your watch by how fast these lines show up. In the Bloodstained Banner, I go through these excuses one by one. This module is your quick guide to recognizing them. Now, to be fair, sometimes external pressures really do matter. Sanctions can hurt. Hostile neighbors can hurt. War can wreck an economy. I don't deny any of that. But you have to separate outside pressure from internal design flaws. Ask a simple question. If every time we build this machine, it explodes in roughly the same way, how long do we blame the weather outside of the blueprint? When we look at regime after regime that tries to implement socialism or communism, we see recurring design issues. Concentration of power in a one-party state. Suppression of dissent, so mistakes aren't corrected. Central planning that misreads local conditions. Lack of incentives for efficiency or innovation. These are built-in risks, not just bad luck. Outside pressure can make things worse, but it didn't create the underlying fragility. If your system collapses every time it's stressed, that's not just because somebody pushed it. That's because you built something that can't handle stress. Now, let's handle the most popular line head on. That wasn't real socialism. You'll hear this about the Soviet Union, about Mao's China, about basically any socialist or communist regime that ended in famine, purges, or economic ruin. The pattern goes like this. When a movement is rising, activists call it true socialism or real communism. When it's in power, they point to it with pride. Look at the revolution. When it fails, they say, well, that was never real socialism. In Bloodstained Banner, I argue that this is a no true Scotsman move. Whenever reality contradicts the idealized theory, the failed example gets kicked out of the category. If every success gets counted as socialism, but every failure gets reclassified as not real socialism, then the ideology stops being testable. It becomes a floating fantasy that can never be falsified, no matter how many real-world attempts end in disaster. Next up, sanctions ruined it. Again, sanctions and blockades can absolutely damage an economy. But when you see chronic shortages, corruption, black markets, falling productivity before the worst sanctions are even applied, you have to admit that something else is going on too. A system that needs perfect global cooperation and zero hostility to function at a basic level is not a robust system. Any serious evaluation has to say, yes, external pressure mattered, and also the internal system was brittle, inefficient, and prone to abuse. Otherwise, you're treating the ideology like a delicate flower that can never be expected to survive in the real world. The third big defense is, the idea is good, the people are bad. You'll hear the things like that. If only they had better leaders. If only they hadn't been corrupt. If only the revolution hadn't been betrayed. Here's the problem with that. Every system has to be judged not just by how it works with perfect saints in charge, but by how it behaves with actual human beings running it. If a system requires a flawless ruling class to avoid turning into a nightmare, then the problem isn't just bad people. The problem is that the system hands too much unchecked power to whoever grabs the levers. In Bloodstained Banner, I talk about human nature and hierarchy, ambition, self-interest, and the temptation to abuse centralized power. Socialist and communist experiments do not fail because one or two unique villains showed up by accident. They failed in patterned ways because the structures they built made abuse easy and accountability almost impossible. Finally, let's talk about shifting goalposts and cherry picking. This is where you see people take a small policy that worked in a socialist or communist regime, maybe a literacy campaign, a basic health metrics, and then ignore the secret police, the mass graves, the censorship, and the people risking their lives to escape. Or they'll say, we just want the good parts of those systems without the bad parts, without acknowledging that the bad parts were often essential to enforcing the good parts. If you only look at one slice of the story, a clinic, a school, a statistic, and ignore the prisons, the camps, and the border guards, you're not doing analysis, you're doing marketing. Chapter 4 of Bloodstained Banner takes these excuses apart one by one, showing how each rhetorical move tries to salvage the dream by refusing to look at the full record. Let's bring this home. In this module, we named the standard defenses. That wasn't real socialism. Sanctions ruined it. The idea was good. The people were bad. Drew a line between external pressures and internal design flaws. Talked about moving the goalposts and cherry-picking successes while ignoring authoritarianism. Here's the book tie-in line. For this module, Chapter 4 in Bloodstained Banner takes these excuses one by one. This module is your quick guide to those arguments so you can recognize them when you see them. If the video helped you spot the pattern, the chapter gives you the examples, the quotations, and the citations to back it up. In the next module, we'll keep moving forward with the historical reality of socialism and communism, not as an abstract theory, but as governments that millions of people had to live under. I'm Sean Armstrong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.